Chapter 4. My interrupted flight toward the Himalayas. Leave your classroom on some trifling pretext and engage a hackney carriage. Stop in the lane where no one in my house can see you. These were my final instructions to Amar Mitter, a high school friend who planned to accompany me to the Himalayas. We had chosen the following day for our flight. Precautions were necessary, as Ananta exercised a vigilant eye. He was determined to foil the plans of escape which he suspected were uppermost in my mind. The amulet, like a spiritual yeast, was silently at work within me. Amidst the Himalayan snows, I hoped to find the master whose face often appeared to me in visions. The family was living now in Calcutta, where father had been permanently transferred. Following the patriarchal Indian custom, Ananta had brought his bride to live in our home, now at 4 Gurpar Road. There, in a small attic room, I engaged in daily meditations and prepared my mind for the divine search. The memorable morning arrived with inauspicious rain. Hearing the wheels of Amar's carriage in the road, I hastily tied together a blanket, a pair of sandals, Lahiri Mahasaya's picture, a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, a string of prayer beads, and 2 loincloths. This bundle I threw from my 3rd-story window. I ran down the steps and passed my uncle, buying fish at the door. "What is the excitement?" His gaze roved suspiciously over my person. I gave him a non-committal smile and walked to the lane. Retrieving my bundle, I joined Amar with conspiratorial caution. We drove to Chandni Chowk, a merchandise center. For months we had been saving our tiffin money to buy English clothes. Knowing that my clever brother could easily play the part of a detective, we thought to outwit him by European garb. On the way to the station, we stopped for my cousin, Yotin Ghosh, whom I called Jatinda. He was a new convert, longing for a guru in the Himalayas. He donned the new suit we had in readiness. Well camouflaged, we hoped. A deep elation possessed our hearts. All we need now are canvas shoes. I led my companions to a shop displaying rubber-soled footwear. Articles of leather, gotten only through the slaughter of animals, must be absent on this holy trip. I halted on the street to remove the leather cover from my Bhagavad Gita and the leather straps from my English-made solar topi helmet. At the station, we bought tickets to Burdwan, where we planned to transfer for Hardwar in the Himalayan foothills. As soon as the train, like ourselves, was in flight, I gave utterance to a few of my glorious anticipations. "Just imagine," I ejaculated. "We shall be initiated by the masters and experience the trance of cosmic consciousness. Our flesh will be charged with such magnetism that wild animals of the Himalayas will come tamely near us. Tigers will be no more than meek house cats awaiting our caresses." This remark, picturing a prospect I considered entrancing, both metaphorically and literally, brought an enthusiastic smile from Amar. But Jatinda averted his gaze, directing it through the window at the scampering landscape. "Let the money be divided in 3 portions." Jatinda broke a long silence with this suggestion. "Each of us should buy his own ticket at Burdwan. Thus, no one at the station will surmise that we are running away together." I unsuspectingly agreed. At dusk, our train stopped at Burdwan. Jatinda entered the ticket office. Amar and I sat on the platform. We waited 15 minutes, then made unavailing inquiries. Searching in all directions, we shouted Jatinda's name with the urgency of fright. But he had faded into the dark unknown surrounding the little station. I was completely unnerved, shocked to a peculiar numbness. That God would countenance this depressing episode. The romantic occasion of my first carefully planned flight after him was cruelly marred. Amar, we must return home. I was weeping like a child. Jatinda's careless departure is an ill omen. This trip is doomed to failure. Is this your love for the Lord? Can't you stand the little test of a treacherous companion? Through Amar's suggestion of a divine test, my heart steadied itself. We refreshed ourselves with famous Burdwan sweetmeats, sitabog, food for the goddess, and motichur, nuggets of sweet pearl. In a few hours we entrained for hardware via Bareilly. Changing trains at Moghul Sarai, we discussed a vital matter as we waited on the platform. Amar, we may soon be closely questioned by railroad officials. I am not underrating my brother's ingenuity. No matter what the outcome, I will not speak untruth. All I ask of you, Mukunda, is to keep still. Don't laugh or grin while I am talking. At this moment, a European station agent accosted me. He waved a telegram whose import I immediately grasped. Are you running away from home in anger? No. I was glad his choice of words permitted me to make emphatic reply. Not anger, but divinest melancholy was responsible, I knew, for my unconventional behavior. The official then turned to Amar. The duel of wits that followed hardly permitted me to maintain the counseled stoic gravity. Where is the third boy? The man injected a full ring of authority into his voice. Come on, speak the truth. Sir, I notice you are wearing eyeglasses. Can't you see that we are only two? Amar smiled impudently. I am not a magician. I can't conjure up a third companion. The official, noticeably disconcerted by this impertinence, sought a new field of attack. What is your name? I am called Thomas. I am the son of an English mother and a converted Christian Indian father. What is your friend's name? I call him Thompson. By this time my inward mirth had reached a zenith. I unceremoniously made for the train, whistling for departure. Amar followed with the official, who was credulous and obliging enough to put us into a European compartment. It evidently pained him to think of two half-English boys traveling in the section allotted to natives. After his polite exit, I lay back on the seat and laughed uncontrollably. My friend wore an expression of blithe satisfaction at having outwitted a veteran European official. On the platform I had contrived to read the telegram. From my brother, it went thus. 3 Bengali boys in English clothes running away from home toward Hardwar via Moghul Sarai. Please detain them until my arrival. Ample reward for your services. Amar, I told you not to leave marked timetables in your home? My glance was reproachful. Brother must have found one there. My friend sheepishly acknowledged the thrust. We halted briefly in Bareilly, where Dwarka Prasad awaited us, with a telegram from Ananta. My old friend tried valiantly to detain us. I convinced him that our flight had not been undertaken lightly. As on a previous occasion, Dwarka refused my invitation to set forth to the Himalayas. While our train stood in a station that night and I was half asleep, Amar was awakened by another questioning official. He too fell a victim to the hybrid charms of Thomas and Thompson. The train bore us triumphantly into a dawn arrival at Hardwar. The majestic mountains loomed invitingly in the distance. We dashed through the station and entered the freedom of city crowds. Our first act was to change into native costume, as Ananta had. Somehow penetrated our European disguise. A premonition of capture weighed on my mind. Deeming it advisable to leave Hardwar at once, we bought tickets to proceed north to Rishikesh, a soil long hallowed by feet of many masters. I had already boarded the train, while Amar lagged on the platform. He was brought to an abrupt halt by a shout from a policeman. Our unwelcome guardian escorted us to a station bungalow and took charge of our money. He explained courteously that it was his duty to hold us until my elder brother arrived. Learning that the truant's destination had been the Himalayas, the officer related a strange story. I see you are crazy about saints. You will never meet a greater man of God than the one I saw only yesterday. My brother officer and I first encountered him 5 days ago. We were patrolling by the Ganges, on a sharp lookout for a certain murderer. Our instructions were to capture him, alive or dead. He was known to be masquerading as a sadhu in order to rob pilgrims. A short way before us, we spied a figure which resembled the description of the criminal. He ignored our command to stop. We ran to overpower him. Approaching his back, I wielded my axe with tremendous force. The man's right arm was severed almost completely from his body. Without outcry or any glance at the ghastly wound, the stranger astonishingly continued his swift pace. As we jumped in front of him, he spoke quietly. "I am not the murderer you are seeking." I was deeply mortified to see I had injured the person of a divine-looking sage. Prostrating myself at his feet, I implored his pardon and offered my turban cloth to staunch the heavy spurts of blood. "Son, that was just an understandable mistake on your part." The saint regarded me kindly. "Run along and don't reproach yourself. The beloved mother is taking care of me." He pushed his dangling arm into its stump, and lo, it adhered. The blood inexplicably ceased to flow. "Come to me under yonder tree in 3 days, and you will find me fully healed. Thus you will feel no remorse." Yesterday my brother officer and I went eagerly to the designated spot. The sadhu was there and allowed us to examine his arm. It bore no scar or trace of hurt. "I am going via Rishikesh to the Himalayan solitudes." He blessed us as he departed quickly. I feel that my life has been uplifted through his sanctity. The officer concluded with a pious ejaculation. His experience had obviously moved him beyond his usual depths. With an impressive gesture, he handed me a printed clipping about the miracle. In the usual garbled manner of the sensational type of newspaper, not missing, alas, even in India, the reporter's version was slightly exaggerated. It indicated that the sadhu had been almost decapitated. Amar and I lamented that we had missed the great Yogi who could forgive his persecutor in such a Christ-like way. India, materially poor for the last 2 centuries, yet has an inexhaustible fund of divine wealth. Spiritual skyscrapers may occasionally be encountered by the wayside, even by worldly men like this policeman. We thank the officer for relieving our tedium with his marvelous story. He was probably intimating that he was more fortunate than we. He had met an illumined saint without effort. Our earnest search had ended not at the feet of a master, but in a coarse police station, so near the Himalayas, and yet in our captivity so far. I told Amar I felt doubly impelled to seek freedom. Let us slip away when opportunity offers. We can go on foot to holy Rishikesh. I smiled encouragingly. But my companion had turned pessimist as soon as the stalwart prop of our money had been taken from us. If we started a trek over such dangerous jungle land, we should finish not in the city of saints, but in the stomachs of tigers. Ananta and Amar's brother arrived after 3 days. Amar greeted his relative with affectionate relief. I was unreconciled. Ananta got no more from me than a severe upbraiding. "I understand how you feel," my brother spoke soothingly. "All I ask of you is to accompany me to Benares to meet a certain saint, and go on to Calcutta to visit your grieving father for a few days. Then you can resume your search here for a master." Amar entered the conversation at this point to disclaim any intention of returning to Hardwar with me. He was enjoying the familial warmth, but I knew I would never abandon the quest for my guru. Our party entrained for Benares. There I had a singular and instant response to my prayers. A clever scheme had been prearranged by Ananta. Before seeing me at Hardwar, he had stopped in Benares to ask a certain scriptural authority to interview me later. Both the Pandit and his son had promised to undertake my dissuasion from the path of a sannyasi. Ananta took me to their home. The son, a young man of ebullient manner, greeted me in the courtyard. He engaged me in a lengthy philosophic discourse. Professing to have a clairvoyant knowledge of my future, he discountenanced my idea of being a monk. "You will meet continual misfortune and be unable to find God if you insist on deserting your ordinary responsibilities. You cannot work out your past karma without worldly experiences." Krishna's immortal words rose to my lips in reply. Even he with the worst of karma, who ceaselessly meditates on me, quickly loses the effects of his past bad actions. Becoming a high-souled being, he soon attains perennial peace. Arjuna, know this for certain. The devotee who puts his trust in me never perishes. But the forceful prognostications of the young man had slightly shaken my confidence. With all the fervor of my heart, I prayed silently to God. "Please solve my bewilderment and answer me right here and now if thou dost desire me to lead the life of a renunciate or a worldly man." I noticed a sadhu of noble countenance standing just outside the compound of the Pandit's house. Evidently he had overheard the spirited conversation between the self-styled clairvoyant and myself, for the stranger called me to his side. I felt a tremendous power flowing from his calm eyes. "Son, don't listen to that ignoramus. In response to your prayer, the Lord tells me to assure you that your sole path in this life is that of the renunciate." With astonishment as well as gratitude, I smiled happily at this decisive message. "Come away from that man!" The ignoramus was calling me from the courtyard. My saintly guide raised his hand in blessing and slowly departed. "That sadhu is just as crazy as you are." It was the hoary-headed Pandit who made this charming observation. He and his son were gazing at me lugubriously. "I heard that he too has left his home in a vague search for God." I turned away. To Ananta, I remarked that I would not engage in further discussion with our hosts. My brother agreed to an immediate departure. We soon entrained for Calcutta. "Mr. Detective, how did you discover I had fled with 2 companions?" I vented my lively curiosity to Ananta during our homeward journey. He smiled mischievously. "At your school I found that Amar had left his classroom and had not returned. I went to his home the next morning and unearthed a marked timetable. Amar's father was just leaving by carriage and was talking to the coachman. 'My son will not ride with me to his school this morning. He has disappeared.' The father moaned. 'I heard from a brother coachman that your son and 2 others, dressed in European suits, boarded the train at Howrah station,' the man stated. 'They made a present of their leather shoes to the cab driver.' Thus I had 3 clues: the timetable, the trio of boys, and the English clothing. I was listening to Ananta's disclosures with mingled mirth and vexation. Our generosity to the coachman had been slightly misplaced. Of course, I rushed to send telegrams to station officials in all the cities which Amar had underlined in the timetable. He had checked Bareilly, so I wired your friend Dwarka there. After inquiries in our Calcutta neighborhood, I learned that cousin Jatinda had been absent one night, but had arrived home the following morning in European garb. I sought him out and invited him to dinner. He accepted, quite disarmed by my friendly manner. On the way, I led him unsuspectingly to a police station. He was surrounded by several officers whom I had previously selected for their ferocious appearance. Under their formidable gaze, Jatinda agreed to account for his mysterious conduct. I started for the Himalayas in a buoyant, spiritual mood, he explained. Inspiration filled me at the prospect of meeting the masters. But as soon as Mukunda said, "During our ecstasies in the Himalayan caves, tigers will be spellbound and sit around us like tame pussies," my spirits froze. Beads of perspiration formed on my brow. What then? I thought. If the vicious nature of the tigers be not changed through the power of our spiritual trance, shall they treat us with the kindness of house cats? In my mind's eye, I already saw myself the compulsory inmate of some tiger's stomach, entering there not at once with the whole body, but by installments of its several parts. My anger at Jatinda's vanishment was evaporated in laughter. The hilarious sequel on the train was worth all the anguish he had caused me. I must confess to a slight feeling of satisfaction. Jatinda, too, had not escaped an encounter with the police. "Ananta, you are a born sleuth-hound." My glance of amusement was not without some exasperation. "And I shall tell Jatinda I am glad he was prompted by no mood of treachery, as it appeared, but only by the prudent instinct of self-preservation." At home in Calcutta, Father touchingly requested me to curb my roving feet until at least the completion of my high school studies. In my absence, he had lovingly hatched a plot by arranging for a saintly Pandit, Swami Kebalananda, to come regularly to the house. "The sage will be your Sanskrit tutor," my parent announced confidently. Father hoped to satisfy my religious yearnings by instructions from a learned philosopher. But the tables were subtly turned. My new teacher, far from offering intellectual aridities, fanned the embers of my God aspiration. Unknown to Father, Swami Kebalananda was an exalted disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya. The peerless Guru had possessed thousands of disciples, silently drawn to him by the irresistibility of his divine magnetism. I learned later that Lahiri Mahasaya had often characterized Kebalananda as Rishi, or illumined sage. Luxuriant curls framed my tutor's handsome face. His dark eyes were guileless, with the transparency of a child's. All the movements of his slight body were marked by a restful deliberation. Ever gentle and loving, he was firmly established in the infinite consciousness. Many of our happy hours together were spent in deep Kriya meditation. Kebalananda was a noted authority on the ancient Shastras or sacred books. His erudition had earned him the title of Shastri Mahasaya, by which he was usually addressed. But my progress in Sanskrit scholarship was unnoteworthy. I sought every opportunity to forsake prosaic grammar and to talk of yoga and Lahiri Mahasaya. My tutor obliged me one day by telling me something of his own life with the master. Rarely fortunate, I was able to remain near Lahiri Mahasaya for 10 years. His Benares home was my nightly goal of pilgrimage. The Guru was always present in a small front parlor on the first floor. As he sat in lotus posture on a backless wooden seat, his disciples garlanded him in a semicircle. His eyes sparkled and danced with the joy of the divine. They were ever half closed, peering through the inner telescopic orb into a sphere of eternal bliss. He seldom spoke at length. Occasionally his gaze would focus on a student in need of help. Healing words poured then like an avalanche of light. An indescribable peace blossomed within me at the master's glance. I was permeated with his fragrance, as though from a lotus of infinity. To be with him, even without exchanging a word for days, was experience which changed my entire being. If any invisible barrier rose in the path of my concentration, I would meditate at the Guru's feet. There the most tenuous states came easily within my grasp. Such perceptions eluded me in the presence of lesser teachers. The Master was a living temple of God, whose secret doors were open to all disciples through devotion. Lahiri Mahasaya was no bookish interpreter of the scriptures. Effortlessly he dipped into the divine library. Foam of words and spray of thoughts gushed from the fountain of his omniscience. He had the wondrous clavis which unlocked the profound philosophical science embedded ages ago in the Vedas. If asked to explain the different planes of consciousness mentioned in the ancient texts, he would smilingly assent. I will undergo those states and presently tell you what I perceive. He was thus diametrically unlike the teachers who commit scripture to memory, and then give forth unrealized abstractions. Please expound the holy stanzas as the meaning occurs to you. The taciturn guru often gave this instruction to a nearby disciple. I will guide your thoughts, that the right interpretation be uttered. In this way, many of Lahiri Mahasaya's perceptions came to be recorded, with voluminous commentaries by various students. The Master never counseled slavish belief. Words are only shells, he said. Win conviction of God's presence through your own joyous contact in meditation. No matter what the disciple's problem, the Guru advised Kriya Yoga for its solution. The yogic key will not lose its efficiency when I am no longer present in the body to guide you. This technique cannot be bound, filed, and forgotten in the manner of theoretical inspirations. Continue ceaselessly on your path to liberation through Kriya, whose power lies in practice. I myself consider Kriya the most effective device of salvation through self-effort ever to be evolved in man's search for the infinite. Kebalananda concluded with this earnest testimony. Through its use, the omnipotent God, hidden in all men, became visibly incarnated in the flesh of Lahiri Mahasaya and a number of his disciples. A Christ-like miracle by Lahiri Mahasaya took place in Kebalananda's presence. My saintly tutor recounted the story one day, his eyes remote from the Sanskrit texts before us. A blind disciple, Ramu, aroused my active pity. Should he have no light in his eyes when he faithfully served our Master, in whom the divine was fully blazing? One morning I sought to speak to Ramu, but he sat for patient hours fanning the Guru with a handmade palm leaf punkah. When the devotee finally left the room, I followed him. Ramu, how long have you been blind? From my birth, sir. Never have my eyes been blessed with a glimpse of the sun. Our omnipotent Guru can help you. Please make a supplication. The following day, Ramu diffidently approached Lahiri Mahasaya. The disciple felt almost ashamed to ask that physical wealth be added to his spiritual superabundance. Master, the illuminator of the cosmos is in you. I pray you to bring his light into my eyes, that I perceive the sun's lesser glow. Ramu, someone has connived to put me in a difficult position. I have no healing power. Sir, the infinite one within you can certainly heal. That is indeed different, Ramu. God's limit is nowhere. He who ignites the stars and the cells of flesh with mysterious life effulgence can surely bring luster of vision into your eyes. The Master touched Ramu's forehead at the point between the eyebrows. 4. Keep your mind concentrated there, and frequently chant the name of the Prophet Rama for 7 days. The splendor of the sun shall have a special dawn for you. Lo, in 1 week it was so. For the first time, Ramu beheld the fair face of nature. The Omniscient One had unerringly directed his disciple to repeat the name of Rama, adored by him above all other saints. Ramu's faith was the devotionally plowed soil in which the Guru's powerful seed of permanent healing sprouted. Kebalananda was silent for a moment, then paid a further tribute to his Guru. It was evident in all miracles performed by Lahiri Mahasaya that he never allowed the ego principle 4 to 9 to consider itself a causative force. By perfection of resistless surrender, the Master enabled the prime healing power to flow freely through him. The numerous bodies which were spectacularly healed through Lahiri Mahasaya eventually had to feed the flames of cremation. But the silent spiritual awakenings he effected, the Christ-like disciples he fashioned, are his imperishable miracles. I never became a Sanskrit scholar. Kebalananda taught me a diviner syntax. Chapter 5. A perfume saint displays his wonders. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. I did not have this wisdom of Solomon to comfort me. I gazed searchingly about me, on any excursion from home, for the face of my destined Guru. But my path did not cross his own until after the completion of my high school studies. 2 years elapsed between my flight with Amar toward the Himalayas and the great day of Sri Yukteswar's arrival into my life. During that interim, I met a number of sages, the perfume saint, the Tiger Swami, Nagendra Nath Bhaduri, Master Mahasaya, and the famous Bengali scientist Jagadish Chandra Bose. My encounter with the perfume saint had 2 preambles, one harmonious and the other humorous. God is simple. Everything else is complex. Do not seek absolute values in the relative world of nature. These philosophical finalities gently entered my ear as I stood silently before a temple image of Kali. Turning, I confronted a tall man whose garb, or lack of it, revealed him a wandering sadhu. You have indeed penetrated the bewilderment of my thoughts. I smiled gratefully. The confusion of benign and terrible aspects in nature, as symbolized by Kali, has puzzled wiser heads than mine. Few there be who solve her mystery. Good and evil is the challenging riddle which life places sphinx-like before every intelligence. Attempting no solution, most men pay forfeit with their lives. Penalty now, even as in the days of Thebes. Here and there, a towering, lonely figure never cries defeat. From the mire of duality he plucks the cleaveless truth of unity. You speak with conviction, sir. I have long exercised an honest introspection, the exquisitely painful approach to wisdom. Self-scrutiny, relentless observance of one's thoughts, is a stark and shattering experience. It pulverizes the stoutest ego. But true self-analysis mathematically operates to produce seers. The way of self-expression, individual acknowledgments, results in egotists, sure of the right to their private interpretations of God and the universe. Truth humbly retires, no doubt, before such arrogant originality. I was enjoying the discussion. Man can understand no eternal verity until he has freed himself from pretensions. The human mind, bared to a centuried slime, is teeming with repulsive life of countless world delusions. Struggles of the battlefields pale into insignificance here, when man first contends with inward enemies. No mortal foes these to be overcome by harrowing array of might. Omnipresent, unresting, pursuing man even in sleep, subtly equipped with a miasmic weapon, these soldiers of ignorant lusts seek to slay us all. Thoughtless is the man who buries his ideals, surrendering to the common fate. Can he seem other than impotent wooden, ignominious. "Respected sir, have you no sympathy for the bewildered masses?" The sage was silent for a moment, then answered obliquely, "To love both the invisible God, repository of all virtues, and visible man, apparently possessed of none, is often baffling. But ingenuity is equal to the maze. Inner research soon exposes a unity in all human minds, the stalwart kinship of selfish motive. In one sense at least, the brotherhood of man stands revealed. An aghast humility follows this leveling discovery. It ripens into compassion for one's fellows, blind to the healing potencies of the soul awaiting exploration. The saints of every age, sir, have felt like yourself for the sorrows of the world. Only the shallow man loses responsiveness to the woes of others' lives as he sinks into narrow suffering of his own. The sadhu's austere face was noticeably softened. The one who practices a scalpel self-dissection will know an expansion of universal pity. Release is given him from the deafening demands of his ego. The love of God flowers on such soil. The creature finally turns to his Creator, if for no other reason than to ask in anguish, "Why, Lord, why?" By ignoble whips of pain, man is driven at last into the infinite presence, whose beauty alone should lure him. The sage and I were present in Calcutta's Kaligat temple, whither I had gone to view its famed magnificence. With a sweeping gesture, my chance companion dismissed the ornate dignity. "Bricks and mortar sing us no audible tune. The heart opens only to the human chant of being." We strolled to the inviting sunshine at the entrance, where throngs of devotees were passing to and fro. "You are young," the sage surveyed me thoughtfully. "India, too, is young. The ancient rishis, 5 to 3, laid down ineradicable patterns of spiritual living. Their hoary dictums suffice for this day and land. Not outmoded, not unsophisticated against the guiles of materialism, the disciplinary precepts mold India still. By millenniums more than embarrassed scholars care to compute, the skeptic time has validated Vedic worth. Take it for your heritage." As I was reverently bidding farewell to the eloquent sadhu, he revealed a clairvoyant perception. "After you leave here today, an unusual experience will come your way." I quitted the temple precincts and wandered along aimlessly. Turning a corner, I ran into an old acquaintance, one of those long-winded fellows whose conversational powers ignore time and embrace eternity. "I will let you go in a very short while, if you will tell me all that has happened during the 6 years of our separation." What a paradox! I must leave you now. But he held me by the hand, forcing out tidbits of information. He was like a ravenous wolf, I thought in amusement. The longer I spoke, the more hungrily he sniffed for news. Inwardly, I petitioned the goddess Kali to devise a graceful means of escape. My companion left me abruptly. I sighed with relief and doubled my pace, dreading any relapse into the garrulous fever. Hearing rapid footsteps behind me, I quickened my speed. I dared not look back, but with a bound the youth rejoined me, jovially clasping my shoulder. "I forgot to tell you of Gandha Baba, perfume saint, who is gracing yonder house." He pointed to a dwelling a few yards distant. "Do meet him. He is interesting. You may have an unusual experience. Goodbye." And he actually left me. The similarly worded prediction of the sadhu at Kaligat temple flashed to my mind. Definitely intrigued, I entered the house and was ushered into a commodious parlor. A crowd of people were sitting, Orient-wise, here and there on a thick orange-colored carpet. An odd whisper reached my ear. "Behold Gandha Baba on the leopard skin. He can give the natural perfume of any flower to a scentless one, or revive a wilted blossom, or make a person's skin exude delightful fragrance. I looked directly at the saint. His quick gaze rested on mine. He was plump and bearded, with dark skin and large gleaming eyes. Son, I am glad to see you. Say what you want. Would you like some perfume? What for? I thought his remark rather childish. To experience the miraculous way of enjoying perfumes. Harnessing God to make odors? What of it? God makes perfume anyway. Yes, but he fashions frail bottles of petals for fresh use and discard. Can you materialize flowers? I materialize perfumes, little friend. Then scent factories will go out of business. I will permit them to keep their trade. My own purpose is to demonstrate the power of God. Sir, is it necessary to prove God? Isn't he performing miracles in everything, everywhere? Yes, but we too should manifest some of his infinite creative variety. How long did it take to master your art? 12 years. For manufacturing scents by astral means, it seems, my honored saint, you have been wasting a dozen years for fragrances, which you can obtain with a few rupees from a florist's shop. Perfumes fade with flowers. Perfumes fade with death. Why should I desire that which pleases the body only? Mr. Philosopher, you please my mind. Now stretch forth your right hand. He made a gesture of blessing. I was a few feet away from Gandha Baba. No one else was near enough to contact my body. I extended my hand, which the yogi did not touch. What perfume do you want? Rose. Be it so. To my great surprise, the charming fragrance of rose was wafted strongly from the center of my palm. I smilingly took a large, white, scentless flower from a nearby vase. Can this odorless blossom be permeated with jasmine? Be it so. A jasmine fragrance instantly shot from the petals. I thanked the wonder worker and seated myself by one of his students. He informed me that Gandha Baba, whose proper name was Vishuddhananda, had learned many astonishing yoga secrets from a master in Tibet. The Tibetan yogi, I was assured, had attained the age of over 1,000 years. His disciple Gandha Baba does not always perform his perfume feats in the simple verbal manner you have just witnessed. The student spoke with obvious pride in his master. His procedure differs widely to accord with diversity in temperaments. He is marvelous. Many members of the Calcutta intelligentsia are among his followers. I inwardly resolved not to add myself to their number. A guru too literally marvelous was not to my liking. With polite thanks to Gandha Baba, I departed. Sauntering home, I reflected on the 3 varied encounters the day had brought forth. My sister Uma met me as I entered our Gurpar Road door. You are getting quite stylish, using perfumes. Without a word, I motioned her to smell my hand. What an attractive rose fragrance. It is unusually strong. Thinking it was strongly unusual, I silently placed the astrally scented blossom under her nostrils. Oh, I love jasmine. She seized the flower. A ludicrous bafflement passed over her face as she repeatedly sniffed the odor of jasmine from a type of flower she well knew to be scentless. Her reactions disarmed my suspicion that Gandha Baba had induced an autosuggestive state whereby I alone could detect the fragrances. Later I heard from a friend, Yoganada, that the perfume saint had a power which I wish were possessed by the starving millions of Asia, and today of Europe as well. I was present with 100 other guests at Gandha Baba's home in Burdwan, Yoganada told me. It was a gala occasion. Because the yogi was reputed to have the power of extracting objects out of thin air, I laughingly requested him to materialize some out-of-season tangerines. Immediately, the luchis 5 to 4, which were present on all the banana leaf plates, became puffed up. Each of the bread envelopes proved to contain a peeled tangerine. I bit into my own with some trepidation, but found it delicious. Years later, I understood by inner realization how Gandha Baba accomplished his materializations. The method, alas, is beyond the reach of the world's hungry hordes. The different sensory stimuli to which man reacts, tactual, visual, gustatory, auditory, and olfactory, are produced by vibratory variations in electrons and protons. The vibrations, in turn, are regulated by lifetrons, subtle life forces, or finer than atomic energies, intelligently charged with the 5 distinctive sensory idea, substances. Gandha Baba, tuning himself with the cosmic force by certain yogic practices, was able to guide the lifetrons to rearrange their vibratory structure and objectivize the desired result. His perfume, fruit, and other miracles were actual materializations of mundane vibrations, and not inner sensations hypnotically produced. Performances of miracles such as shown by the perfume saint are spectacular but spiritually useless. Having little purpose beyond entertainment, they are digressions from a serious search for God. Hypnotism has been used by physicians in minor operations as a sort of psychical chloroform for persons who might be endangered by an anesthetic. But a hypnotic state is harmful to those often subjected to it. A negative psychological effect ensues, which in time deranges the brain cells. Hypnotism is trespass into the territory of another's consciousness. Its temporary phenomena have nothing in common with the miracles performed by men of divine realization, awake in God. True saints effect changes in this dream world by means of a will harmoniously attuned to the creative cosmic dreamer. Ostentatious display of unusual powers are decried by masters. The Persian mystic, Abu Sa'id, once laughed at certain fakirs who were proud of their miraculous powers over water, air, and space. "A frog is also at home in the water," Abu Sa'id pointed out in gentle scorn. "The crow and the vulture easily fly in the air. The devil is simultaneously present in the east and in the west. A true man is he who dwells in righteousness among his fellow men, who buys and sells, yet is never for a single instant forgetful of God." On another occasion, the great Persian teacher gave his views on the religious life. To lay aside what you have in your head, selfish desires and ambitions, to freely bestow what you have in your hand, and never to flinch from the blows of adversity. Neither the impartial sage at Kalighat temple nor the Tibetan-trained yogi had satisfied my yearning for a guru. My heart needed no tutor for its recognitions, and cried its own bravos, the more resoundingly because unoften summoned from silence. When I finally met my master, he taught me by sublimity of example alone the measure of a true man. Kali represents the eternal principle in nature. She is traditionally pictured as a 4-armed woman, standing on the form of the god Shiva, or the infinite, because nature, or the phenomenal world, is rooted in the noumenon. The 4 arms symbolize cardinal attributes: 2 beneficent, 2 destructive, indicating the essential duality of matter or creation.